Okay, mine's live now. I had to get mine on. Yeah. Lumberjacks. I'm a lumberjack. Let me get it up there. So I had to rep the.
I guess it's coming through.
I like it.
Actually, there's a 5-second delay. So I'm going live
Yeah. Are you going live now?
Yeah, we're live now, man.
Not even give it a heads up. Oh, yeah, you hit the hard, man. That was what's up? What's today? It's February 4th.
February 4th.
Yeah, man, and we're coming at you on our second edition. This is like we did the inaugural edition 2 weeks ago. I feel maybe even a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, it might have been 3.
Yeah. And so what do we got in store this evening here on what do we call it? Prof Talk After Hours, right? A lot of good things. A lot of things have, since in the last 3 weeks that we missed out or got to catch up on, huh? So
this is the post-marathon edition.
Yeah, that's right. So we definitely got to find some pictures up there. Let's see if we got any good pictures of.
Oh no!
Yeah, right. Isn't that
crawling across the finish line?
Yeah, right. So tell me a little bit about it. Let's see. Tell me a little bit about the marathon. You completed the marathon a week ago? Saturday, right? Coming up here.
Yeah. It's a week ago tomorrow.
Okay. 26.2 miles.
26.2.
Tell me about the adventure of 26.2 miles. How did it go? How did it go from beginning to end? Did you woke up at what time? The marathon started. We woke up at what time?
I woke up at a little after 4.
Okay.
In the morning.
Wow. Okay. And is that normal?
Yeah, it's a little bit early.
Okay.
I mean, maybe for the neighborhood I'm in, like that might be par for the course, pun a little bit intended, but it's a little bit early for me. So my goal in the week leading up to the marathon was having some modicum of a regular sleep schedule, and then also in nutrition to really amp up on the carbs. So typically I wouldn't eat as many simple carbs as I did, but especially a couple of days before, I really wanted to make sure that my body wasn't having to process any fiber or any complex carbs. So I got to eat some pasta, got to eat some rice, and woke up at 4 a.m. to get the jitters out.
Wow!
I couldn't contain my excitement and up off the glycogen a little bit.
And so you hit the starting line, as we'll call it, at what time?
7 a.m.
7 a.m. Hit the Heart and Road. And so where did this travel? Like, where did you guys go?
So we started at the Cocopah Casino, which is in Somerton, and then we ran down to San Luis and back.
Wow. So through Somerton, through what town did you hit? Somerton, Gadsden. Where is
Gadsden? Yeah.
So you go through Gadsden. Yeah. So Somerton, Gadsden, down to San Luis. Stopped at San Luis, turned around and came back.
Yeah. So actually, let's see if we can do this. This is what I have from my watch.
Okay.
So this is maybe it's not coming through so well here, but this is where we started.
Okay.
And then we sort of ran right along the highway.
Yeah.
And then came back went down to San Luis, turned around, and then came back up to the casino.
Back up to the casino. Wow. So how was your experience? Well, how was your experience? What would you say?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely great.
Painful? Did you cry? Did you break? What happened, man? How'd it go?
So the overall experience is just like it's so crazy and so wonderful. And I definitely am going to sign up for another one. Okay. Or maybe 2.
Or 2.
It's definitely going to be a thing that happens
on regularly. It seems like wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah, man.
Interesting.
My game plan going in was to split up the race into thirds. And there's kind of a clever way of doing this where you combine imperial, like the American unit or like the quote unquote American units,
Yeah.
and metric. So it's 10, 10, 10. So it's 10 miles, and then 10K, which is 6.2 miles. And the first 10, and you told me this, and there's just a litany of stories on the internet in your first 10 or the first 13 for that first half. Just do not go fast. Do not go fast. You will die a very slow death at the end. So hit the first 10 miles, feeling great, got to see the sunrise, hit the halfway mark at 13.1, still feeling really great, energized. And the second 10 went pretty well too. I had about 40 seconds or maybe as high as 60 seconds in splits from the first, like per mile, from the first 10 miles, the second 10 miles. And then mile 20 hit.
Nice, nice. For what you may not be knowing is, as you're talking there too, as well, I got on my other screen, I'm showing some of the pictures of the marathon that, like, after you completed at the finish line there for a couple of folks there. So there you go. That's always good.
Just stumbling across.
Right. So, tell me, like, was it like, where was the breaking point? Was like there a point when like you were like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this? Like, was there a fear of like, I might have to get the ambulance to carry me over the crossing line? I know there's been a couple of times like that with me, and so I wonder, like, was there a point in time when you were like, I might not make this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It was just one foot in front of the other. So I guess in the 10 10 10 framework, first 10 you're on cloud 9.
Yeah.
The next 10 you just hope that you trained enough and that you have a aerobic basis, or that your cardiovascular fitness is enough to pull you through. And I think the last 10 kilometers is just mind games. It's solely a mental game. Like, I couldn't feel my feet and it's like, oh, they hurt and I can't feel them now.
Yeah. I can't feel my feet.
I knew that I was going to finish. There weren't any cramps that really brought me to a standstill, but I did get really dehydrated because I thought there was supposed to be a aid or hydration station about every mile.
Yeah.
And so I didn't bring my hydration vest, and that was a really big mistake.
Oh no.
So I hit mile 20. I was feeling really good, like glycogen wise. I'd kept gels, about 20, 25 grams of carbs just every hour, kind of pacing along good there. Brought a salt tab, so I think the electrolytes were doing all right. And then I just didn't have enough water or fluids.
Yeah.
Like, my mouth felt like the middle of the Sonora Desert. It's like, oh, this is not a good sign. And eventually I just had to stop running, and I came to a walking pace, and it's like, oh, am I gonna make it under 4? I'm like, I don't think so. But I see this bush in front of me, and I think I can walk until there. Maybe get a little shuffle in.
Yeah, and then go to the next one. Wow, that's awesome, man. Congratulations on the completion of a marathon. One last question I want to ask about kind of the experience, and then we can get into any other topics here. But did you have to put Band-Aids on your nipples? I heard there's a story where you like is that true? Is that something that like people do?
Yeah, it is a common thing. It seems I have never experienced this. Knock on wood. For long runs, I think the longest one I did prior to was 19 miles, and I had no issue with that. So didn't need any Vaseline or any bandages for that. So came away relatively unscathed there.
Wow. So the technology, because I mean, cotton, like when you're wearing cotton, it's tough. Like, you're running for quite a bit of time, get a little bit of sweat on it, and that can literally rub you raw. Interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
So we had the benefit of some technical fabrics.
Yeah. And just the,
compression
the advancements that we've been able to utilize over time. Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, on the topic of injury, like, I'm a little bit curious. What does 26-2 do to you? Like, what damage does this do to your muscles, to your ligaments, to your tendons? Like, what happens after you run a marathon?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you phrased it that way because that's a very common way that people would approach a thought process like that. We think about like injury or we think of damage, um, but I'd also think about kind of in comparison,
Mm.
what would sitting for 4 hours do to you, right? Like sometimes we don't associate things like that with damage or we don't associate things with injury. And I would argue that those have very similar detrimental effects, right? So, okay, we're thinking about an endurance exercise, right? And we're humans. We were essentially made to move, and there's some arguments out there that we're in fact, some of the greatest endurance species to walk the face of this planet, right? There's records of tribes, Aboriginal tribes that would chase down their prey to the point where to exhaustion, and that's how they would hunt them. So, like, we're endurance creatures, built upon the fact that we're built to move. So, I think that a good point of this is to start thinking a little bit less about damage and injury because
Mm.
that puts us into a phase of okay, are we what are we doing wrong? Like we should be expecting pain. Maybe we should be expecting some of those things that are going on. And so I think that maybe even a better word to think about is like stress, right? So how
Mm.
much stress am I doing, and what is going to be the uh, repercussions of that stress? Now, the thing about that is like stress is actually beneficial, but stress can be helpful, and we notice that in all different aspects of life, right? Academia, I have my students just take an exam, and if I gave an exam that had no, like, it wasn't worth any points and it had no time stamp on it, like there's no impetus to do that or to perform or to study for that. So there's a little bit of stress that's added to it, like this is worth 5-10% of your grade, and as a result, it increases your ability to uh, focus in on those things, and that's what my body does, right? I apply a stress, I go out and I exercise, and I pound my feet on the ground. Even the stress of like weight, body, right? It's things we don't think about, imperceivable. They all help us to give us this body that we have. And so, in terms of stress, like what is the stress that's applied? Now, yeah, definitely, there's going to be a uh, response, right? Yeah, we may think that it's quite a bit of stress that we're applying to the body. Maybe
Mm.
even that may have a detrimental effect. But I looked up a study, right? I looked up this study. It's an old study, 1985. And what are they looking at? Basically, you get these creatine kinase enzymes that come down as a sign of protein breakdown, and protein breakdown essentially, assuming that it's either cardiac tissue or muscle tissue, right? And
Mm.
so what do? They have them run, and they get a plug of muscle tissue, pull out a plug of
Ooh.
muscle tissue, and they test it, right? And so the idea here is that okay, if we can associate, it could be one of the two. It could be heart, it could be skeletal muscle. Excuse me. It could be heart, skeletal muscle, or it could be a combination of both, right? We can't really
Mm.
determine whether. So they find out that yeah, you know what, you do have some uh, skeletal muscle breakdown. It starts regenerating within 3 to 5 days. Just the same amount after a marathon, same amount of response as dose response as if you were exercising pretty heavily, right? So
Mm.
not a whole lot of stress is being applied there, uh, in terms of like a well managed cardiovascular and skeletal muscular system. But again, the goal here is that we're looking at like incremental stress, right? Like incremental stress. I think you mentioned even a couple weeks ago you started with Couch to 5K, right? I think that was the book that you started. And I'm sure that the book was a little bit longer than 3 pages long that said, go outside and run a 5K and then do it again, right? Like there was a gradual, progressive load that was applied. And so we're looking at tissues, right? Like that's the essence of it. Are your tissues appropriately loaded or stressed for this said endeavor? And so that's, I think, where we start to get into these effects where it's like, hey, let's not think about damage. Let's not think about the injury per se, right? I see a lot of patients that like have these really basic movements,
Mhm.
deficits, right? Can you lay on your stomach? Can you get up from the ground? These are really basic movements of life. And if you can't complete those, is it because of injury, or is it because there's that stress just isn't being applied appropriately previously, right? And so those are kind of how I look at it. I don't know. Is there? Can I clarify that a little bit better?
Oh man, there's so much. I can ask
I'll
questions till
keep
the
going.
end of
Like,
time on
yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah.
Sean.
This is like, go
End
ahead.
of time. So a lot of really interesting things. One is dose. When we're looking at how you progressively increase the stress or the load, but framed as a dose. I think that's really interesting. So maybe we can come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
Uh, in regards to as a physical therapist is giving people exercise like a prescription, and you're saying like this is the routine or this is the act that you're going to do. Maybe it's a deep squat, maybe it's a Turkish get up, and this is your dose for
Yeah.
that.
Right. Or even, yeah. Wait, was there a question there? Because I'm about to go off.
I'm about to go off. I think maybe we might save this one because I'm interested too in this notion of damage versus stress. So if we're going down to like a cellular level, like what's happening like to mitochondria, like and maybe like in muscles and in tissue, like is there some sort of like death or like necrosis of these fibers?
Okay. So first, first and foremost, you are a wonderfully like developed creature, right? So like we're resilient. We have cells that have their own life, right? Like each of the
Mhm.
trillions of cells of our body have their own life. And by maintaining their own life and viability, they maintain the life of an organism, right? And these cells work at a conjunctive level in terms of tissues, and they make up the characteristics or the fabrics, for the lack of a better term, of our body. And
Mhm.
so you have fabric like your skin that's kind of like, think of like your shirt, protects you. It provides some flexibility, some stretching, some components that allow you to move. You have, and so thinking more, I'm thinking like as a therapist, I think at a tissue level, right? I'm not thinking mitochondria, like, because the characteristics of the tissues are going to be what gives you the healing time, right? That's going to be a big thing, right? How much blood flow does that tissue have? If I pick up a picture like Netter's and I look at these really artistic, really graphic pictures of anatomy, you're going to see some things like that just inherently indicate some uh, characteristics, right? I see muscles and they're bright red and they're rich because they have a lot of blood flow. You see tendons and ligaments and they're
Mhm.
white, and that's because they don't have a lot of blood flow. And it's an artistic rendition of what we see in the tissues, but it gives us this understanding of what's going on. So inherently now I can apply that into my treatment, right? Or even into a application of exercise or stress, right? So I know
Mhm.
that a muscle is going to heal faster than a tendon or a ligament might heal. And even bone, right? Does bone have blood flow? Yeah, bone has blood flow. Does bone have innervation? Yeah, bone has innervation. If I break a bone, it hurts. And so at a tissue level, that's what we're looking at. At the tissue
Mhm.
level, what are the characteristics of this tissue and what am I applying the stress to? And so that's kind of how I look at it. So yeah, if you went out and ran a marathon after a sedentary lifestyle for 10 years of your life, what's the first thing that's going to give out? Maybe the lack of blood flow, those tendons and ligaments, not going to be able to accept the load, the dose, the stress that you're applying to it, right? If we think of exercise as medicine, right? Exercise is medicine, and we say that, we also have to be wareful of the side effects that can occur. I mean, obviously, like increased heart rate. Yeah, that's potentially a side effect, and we should think about those types of things. And we should also think about the dose response of the said tissues that we're about to stress. And everybody's different, right? Every body is just a little bit different in their morphology, if you want to call it, right? Their body type. And as a result, we should take that into account as well.
Nice. So having some sense of baseline, maybe through vitals, what's your resting heart rate? What's your heart rate variability look like? In order, maybe what's your VO2 max if we're thinking about oxygen, blood flow, things like that?
I'd say even more basic than that, because I think our the population deserves a little like a more simple and simple way to do it. And I'm just thinking, like, you should have blood pressure, heart rate, blood pressure, and sats, right? Fairly easy. Fairly easy. You could have a nice little, you could have a finger. I could go grab one from my shelf right
Like
here.
a pulse
Yeah,
ox?
pulse ox, heart, and a blood pressure cuff. Those are two things you can check, right? Like, people should be checking their blood pressure fairly regularly, especially if you're taking medications for said blood pressure, right? Then and heart rate, right? Those are two basic vitals that we can do without even having to go check or do any of those types of things. Yeah, regular checks. And so those are And I especially like the point when you're talking about kind of that baseline, because I think there's baseline on top of vitals, right? On top of baseline, we go and see an orthodontist, get our teeth checked, or a dentist, get our teeth checked on a regular basis. We should be seeing someone to look at our skeletal muscular system, right? So I think there's basic movements that we as humans should be applying into our lifestyle that we see across movement patterns, walking, getting up out of bed, those types of things. And we should demonstrate them, right? Like, we should be able to full overhead physiological range of motion, right? That the tissues require that stress, right? And so they require you going through all physiological range of motion to be healthy. It's just a matter of tissue health. It requires that full range of motion, because essentially that's what those joints were made for. And by going through that, you're providing ultimate health.
So here's a question. I don't know if this quite lines up, but maybe it does. So it sounds like having some sort of baseline to go off of, whether this is getting really intense into what's your heart rate variability, what's your SpO2, what's your resting heart rate, what's your VO2 max, like at what threshold, is your lactate threshold in millimoles per deciliter, right? Like, you can get really hardcore into that, or just like put your finger in a pulse ox. You have a slew of wearables to get heart rate, and you can get a cuff for that. So wherever you're getting this baseline from, that allows you then to calculate a dosage for that stress, then to improve or maybe bring you up to an average range or beyond that for improvement for particular functional movements, whether it's like a deep squat or like a Turkish get up or maybe something that you're hinging on or something.
Yeah. And I'd say, I mean, what is the functional movement? Like, what do you want to do at baseline, right? If it is deep squat, if it is improving your distance running or endurance capability, or is it just even being able to get off of the ground after I fell, right? Like, there's individuals at the other side of the continuum where it's an endeavor or they don't have the movement ability to do such a thing. And the question is, uh, we should be addressing that, right? We should be looking at that dose as opposed to like, okay, maybe well, we won't work on that. Like we'll make sure you don't hit the ground, right? Like I think we should start looking at our, I mean, just encouraging, just looking at our bodies and testing the limits in terms of like, oh, I've never laid on my stomach. I haven't laid on my stomach in 5 or 10 years. Like, why? That's my question. Why? Right? Like, does it? What is the limitation there? Oh, it hurts my back. Well, that's not normal, right? Like, that's not laying on your stomach for 5, 10 minutes shouldn't elicit pain. Uh, a normal individual should be able to get off the ground from their back. And even before, and maybe they should have an idea of what their blood pressure is. Just like basic movements of like initiation is where we can start with some people.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get up into this, like, towards our athletes, and these athletes are, then we build up in towards that deep squat. Like, let's see what your mechanics look like, because now we're applying in performance mode, like velocity. We're challenging all those positions, and I like to call them positions. We're challenging those positions with more stress. We're challenging them by increasing the load, right? External load. We could be a weight, it could be all those different things, whether it's increasing the velocity of the movement, and that requires another level of complexity. So I think we could use this all the way up and down the scale, just having really basic movements from like I said, laying on your stomach, getting off the ground. I'm trying to think of some other ones that look really that. Can you kneel? Right? Can you kneel? No, I can't kneel. Why? What is the limitation there? And that looks
Can
like,
you walk upstairs?
yeah, right.
I
Like,
couldn't the day after.
and that's what we're looking at. Like, is there some way we can get those patients to, or individuals? They don't even have to be
Mm-hmm.
patients. I want to catch these people before they come become patients, because the by the time they see me, it's decrementing their life, right? Like, oftentimes we see these injuries as a result of just incomplete range of motion and incomplete to find the movement there. And as that incomplete range of motion, it'll lead to incidents of pain, right? Like, okay, I occasionally have pain. It doesn't limit my life in any which way. Then from that incident, you get this injury state. And that's where I catch everybody, is that this injury state where, okay, now I can't do the things that I want to do and like to do, and it's impacting my life. Now I need to fix it. If we could catch it before, and that's what we're seeing with this baseline, right? Like, what are the movements that you don't have? You may not have pain, right? I could show you studies about imaging with people that don't have pain, and they have all these same degenerative issues of people that do have pain.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what's the pain generator becomes the question, and how can we address that? Another question becomes, and this is one I know, this is my brain twister for the. Okay, so nociception. Have you ever heard the term nociception? You can even Google it and just read the definition for me. I can read it for you. Nociception.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so nociception. You Google it, and I'll tell you what my definition is, and you read it. Okay, so
Okay.
nociception, as I understand it, is the signal of pain, right? So if I have too much pressure, heat, puncture, any of those types of, like, that would then send a signal. I have signals that then send to my brain and say, hey, pain, right? Like danger, right? So you have this nociception, the sense of pain that's provided by extra pressure, by puncture, by heat, chemical processes, right? Some of them are even chemical burns. So you have a sense of pain. So is that right? What do you have for the definition of nociception?
Yeah, so this is coming from PubMed. It says nociception provides a means of neural feedback that allows the central nervous system to detect and avoid potentially damaging stimuli, both in active and passive settings.
Okay, so a painful, a dangerous stimuli, right? So nociception, we've got the definition of nociception, which essentially leads to pain, right? Like, okay, pain,
Yeah,
I got to
it's like
stop
it's in
that. I need to, yeah,
the etymology, right,
yeah,
in Latin.
yep. So, can you have pain without nociception?
Hmm.
Can you have pain? Can I have pain without nociception, actual physical or chemical deformation tissue damage? I'll let you answer that. This is where I let my class just students in the clinic. I give them that and I just go, "What do you think?" And I wait for them to answer it. So I'll let you answer the question. What do you think? Can you have nociception? Can you excuse me? The question is, can you have pain? Oh, pain, uh, without nociception.
So I have a question back for you. This is my answer to you is a question.
Oh, of
So
course.
if nociception provides a means of neural feedback that allows your central nervous system to realize or to detect this, can you also interrupt that? Can you desensitize yourself?
And so yes, okay. So yes, you can desensitize yourself. You're looking at a top-down effect, right? So the ultimate the control system in your nervous system is your cortical region of your brain, right? Like the gray matter of your brain. So yes, anything from your brain can go top down, right? So like I guess in some sense the meditation, and you can like meditate and just take a couple lashings and not even feel it. Sorry for the reference there, but yeah, I
No.
guess
There's another one I have too.
I guess I guess that's yeah, it's actually possible. And so when students either tell me this yes or no response, and oftentimes they're like, no, you can't have pain without nociception. And I go, hey, what is phantom limb pain?
Hmm.
What is phantom limb pain? Well, and for people that don't know, phantom limb pain is the after individuals have undergone a amputation, they have pain in the now gone region, right? So you can have a below the knee amputation and you'll have a patient complaint of pain, itch, cramp on their foot. The foot's gone. And one of the things is they didn't take out the part of your brain that has your foot at that, that's responsible for your foot movement, but yeah, you can still have pain without the physical chemical tissue damage. And so that just kind of starts to change the whole game, right? Now you're like, whoa, like I can have pain without the damage. And so what does it do? Like what happens there? Yeah. Yeah. You try to, so you're, and one thing that one of my flaws is that your body will prioritize the central nervous system first, right? It'll protect the brain and spinal cord. Your brain controls your body nourishes your brain. And so at the expense of the rest of your body, potentially your brain and spinal cord are protecting themselves, right? Through a limiting my ability to move or signaling pain when, potentially I could move through it. Yeah, it's an interesting concept to work on.
So I had two questions, and you kind of answered a lot of it. It's like, what is pain? So when you're seeing people at the point of injury, this is where pain comes in. So that was my question, like the first question that I wanted to follow up with you on. And the other is there seems to be this area in between when people are going about their everyday lives and when you see them.
Yeah.
Like there seems to be a space in between that where there some intervention, whether it was watching a YouTube video
Mm-hmm.
or doing a set of routines or something that may be preventative in nature.
And exactly. And that's where we get I think that's where we tend to fail our patients is in the sense that like there's a clear delineation in the literature in the rehabilitation literature about acute injuries versus chronic injuries. And so when we're thinking about acute injuries, that's I sprained my ankle, I reached over and I hurt my back. I don't want to say I don't want to give the people these gross like these images of what, because you're resilient, right? Like you are resilient. You those that pain is more likely your nervous system protecting itself rather than actual mechanical injury, right? Without the presence of trauma, right? High velocity fall, but like more than likely it's your central nervous system trying to protect itself. But
Yeah, I mean, the last 10K,
yeah,
my brain was
right.
telling me, you need to stop, and my feet were continuing to go one in front of the other. So I don't think I had
Yeah.
quite yet reached complete muscle failure, and I think it probably would have taken a lot more than that to do that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
And so that where were we going? Oh, and so we get lost in this acute, and so acute pain is nociception, right? Think of acute pain as nociception. You're sprained your ankle is swollen, and now as a result, we need to address that acute pain. If we don't
Mm.
address that acute pain and really get into it quick, it'll start to become chronic pain. Anything after about 3 months, it becomes chronic pain. And now you know what the problem with chronic pain, as we've just been talking about, it gets burned in your brain. And now, on top of the fact of what was nociception, and now nociception has probably gone away, we're dealing with the fact that there's pain because the brain is just trying to the nervous system is just trying to protect itself from or protect the body, right? We want to do this for the body, trying to protect the body, and now it's limiting range of motion in the ankle. It's limiting your walk. Now you never walk the same again, right? Like, which goes right up the chain, and now we're looking at deficits all and around, right? And it's like, yeah, I never get up. I never, that's where we're 10, 20 years down the road. Now we got back pain. We've never laid on our stomach in 5 years. And so, like, it's those types of things that we could address, right? Let's see what a lunge looks like, right? Let me see what your lunge looks like. That would tell me how much ankle dorsiflexion motion you have in that ankle to complete that. And if you can't lunge, which is a basic human movement, then what are you doing out there lifting weights and doing all these crazy things? And what are you doing running a marathon, right? Like, I'm not going to, because it's not trauma. You're resilient, but perpetual stresses lead to results, right? And some of those results may be detrimental because there are side effects to the prescriptions that we apply.
Yeah, this is where the practice makes permanent.
Right. It's not perfect. It's
Yeah.
permanent. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy stuff.
A lot of
Crazy
deprogramming
stuff,
to do there.
crazy stuff. I should start a course on pain or something. I mean, a lot of people do, but I think that the best idea here is to just encourage people on these really basic movements, right? I think I've talked about a couple, like a lunge or like laying on your stomach, or can you get off of the ground? And from there, if there's a limitation, think about why is there a limitation, right? What is it that's limiting me, and then how can I address that, right? Like, essentially you're just kind of working yourself into it, right? Like, is that cognitive behavioral theory, where you're just kind of implementing a little bit of that stress until you become one with it, right? Like, if you're scared of dogs, you put the dog down the hole, and then 90 feet, and then couple of days 85 feet, bring it closer and closer until you feel comfortable. And so that's what we're doing with our bodies.
Like it.
Yeah, man.
It's a way of not the alternative. It seems just like make it go away. Oh, my ankle hurts.
Yeah.
My calves hurt, and I'm not thinking like why. Like, what is causing this outside like a very localized area? Is it this inability to dorsiflex?
Yeah.
In a foot, right? And then you can't walk, or in your ankle.
Yeah. And that's not going to kill you, right? It's not going to kill you. It like the thing, like, what we may even think of it is like TENS, right? TENS is an acronym I like to use very often that
Hmm.
stands for trivial events to non-trivial systems, right? So what is a trivial event? That's an event that, doesn't have a big significance, right? Let's say I don't sleep well for the next couple of days, right? Doesn't really, it's not going to harm me much. It may start to affect a non-trivial system, an important system in my body, like the sleep system. So I start drinking coffee a little bit more regularly, have an energy drink in the afternoons, and as a result, my sleep system starts to become disrupted. And we can now start to think about the effects of your sleep system that it has, right? Decreases your cognitive ability, your ability to produce force, and all those different things in the exercise endeavors. And we get
Mm.
that. Right. Same thing with I forgot what my other example is. I had another example I was thinking about recently, but yeah, like those effects can ultimately, like your teeth, right? Like if you don't do regular hygiene on your teeth, if I don't brush my teeth for a week, my teeth aren't going to automatically fall out. But the perpetual effects of not brushing my teeth will lead to my teeth falling out, and ultimately a decrement on my digestive system, and me getting nutrients into my body, and ultimately um, inhibiting, my quality of life. And
Mm.
so it's the same thing with some of these skeletal muscular things, right? Like if I'm not getting these full ranges of motion of my, shoulders, hips, knees, appropriately, then I'm essentially doing the same decrements that I would if I wasn't getting appropriate sleep or, eating appropriately.
So, do you have a little routine maybe that we could do to address some of these functional movements? Like that's as easy as brushing our teeth every night or flossing our teeth or, you know, trying to maintain some modicum of a normal sleep schedule so we don't upset our circadian rhythm and then have this snowball down into just a whole litany of adverse events.
Yeah, man. So I'm still working on my the a full, like, I'm not going to publish it yet, but I'd say here's my big ones, right?
Forthcoming.
Here's my, yeah, forthcoming, but here it is. Behind my back, right? How far can I reach behind my back? And there's some big details to this, but are those even behind my head, I should say, right? I've got two motions behind my head. How about
Mhm.
behind my back, right? So now I'm looking at my arms and my shoulders. How far, if I
Okay.
reach behind my back, and one thing is, if you have somebody there, like, is your shoulder blade pop out? People's shoulder blades tend to top pop out when they put their hands behind their back.
Oh, wow.
That's a sign of weakness, right? Like that's a sign of weakness and limitation. And so that's actually, like, if you have a dorsal scapular nerve injury, your that pops out because the nerve is disrupted, and even the muscle, and so the muscle's not getting innervation. Even people that, and so in individuals, in fully healthy individuals, that's weakness, right? The shoulder blade popping out like that. So that's the first thing, right? Oh, well, maybe I need to work on those types of things, getting in a posture where I can squeeze my shoulder blades together, hold them, work on rhomboids, those types of things. But that's
Mhm.
like even the first one, right? So this one, and then I can't really demonstrate the two. Actually, where's my? No, yeah, I can't. Oh, maybe. Let me see what I got here. I don't know if I could demonstrate the two, but I would say a squat and a lunge, right? Like a squat is a
Mhm.
nice position to get into, and demonstrate that, and then a lunge, which is one leg in front of the other in a downward position as you get like a 90-90 to the knees. That demonstrates hip flexion, hip extension as well, and so like those are just a few basic movements, but um other ones could be like we mentioned, right? Like, can you lay on your back
Mhm.
and get off the ground? Like, that might be difficult for some people. Like, truly, I can think of like
Mhm.
people that I've met and I've asked, as a physical therapist, first and foremost, get on the ground. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And then I tell them to get up, and they ask me to, they reach their hand out for me to pick them up. No,
Mm.
right? Like, get up off the ground. What does that look like? And
Yeah.
right,
It's
like,
like a
Yeah,
series of motions there,
yeah,
huh?
right. That are basic, right? I'm not asking you to do anything crazy. I'm just asking you to get off the ground.
Right? Like, do you have enough core strength to kind of pump yourself up a little
Yeah.
bit?
We do
And
what?
then
Yeah.
do you have like the hip flexor strength to go from sitting to standing?
And so that's basically it. And if you can't, do it till you can.
All
Try.
right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if I'm lying on my stomach, maybe before or as I'm going to bed or in the morning when I wake up, maybe do a couple of to grass
Yeah.
deep squats,
That's right,
and
man. Get on up.
that'll be like our brushing our teeth.
Definitely. That's right. And
Just
hey,
incorporate
10
these little movements in.
just like brushing your teeth, 10 or 15 minutes a day. That's all it takes.
And if I'm doing something like yoga, for instance,
It's the same thing, and that's why I love yoga. But there's going to be people that are like, I'm not digging yoga. I don't care. This isn't yoga. This is just basic movements. Yoga starts with these basic movements. These sitting, pigeon poses. What is warrior pose? Right. That's a lunge. Right. And it requires these movements that we're looking at. And so I think they're like I think yoga's any of these I love the expression of movement. And so what might be the only decrement of running a marathon is that you don't express that maybe you only express one movement for 4 hours. Right? Variety is going to be the ultimate goal. And so I ran I was here for 26.2. How many times did you hear, right? That's what we're looking at. The variety of motions, just like a variety of diet, right? You can't sit on carbs and protein. You got to eat grains, right? Like different types of grains, different types of proteins, different types of greens, all in that
diversity in your life, like diversity in your portfolio.
Ain't that the truth?
Thank you to
Hashtag.
Robinhood, today's sponsor.
Yeah. Hashtag get your ETH.
Fair enough.
All right.
And I mean, it's like kind of like sitting down, right?
Yeah.
Like you asked at the very beginning, like, does that also not have an adverse effect on you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
speaking of which, we've been sitting down
place.
For what 48, 50 minutes already.
Yeah.
That sounds good, man. Yeah.
Get up and
move.
Some new movements.
Yeah. we need an outro. You got an outro for us?
Oh man.
Probably
we need to get some.
Play the intro. Might as well.
We need to get some outro music here.
Play the outro. I'll do my. I'll put on. I'll show you a couple of movements here. See what I got.
Alrighty.
All right. Let's see.
Okay, you ready for this?
Yeah, I was born ready for this.
All right, here we go.
It's tight.
We've been sitting too long. Move a little bit every day. Oh, got some lunge action going there. All right, here we go.
That's it.
Grass.
That's it. I think I broke something. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Alrighty. As always, thanks.